We locally had what was it here in Owensboro, one of the top 10 ever drug busts in the state of Kentucky or something like that.
That was crazy.
You know, not to be proud of that, but yeah. So I'm sure that was something you got.
I hear there were so many drugs that were caught, they were actually able to give out free samples.
No. Oh my! You don't get me, guys.
Denying it.
Guys, don't get me fired.
No.
This case should never have come to trial.
I don't think it's fair to call my clients frauds. Because one time I turned into a dog and they helped me. Thank you.
Your Honor, we would like to withdraw our plea of not guilty and enter a plea of guilty.
This trial is a travesty. It's a travesty of a mockery, of a sham, of a mockery, of a travesty, of two mockeries, of a sham.
If we are to have faith in justice, we need only to believe in ourselves.
And the truth shall set you free!
How do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Oh, guilty, but with a real good excuse.
I think the truth will come forth.
You can't handle the truth!
Hello, everybody. It's time for more Law Light. As always, brought to you by Foreman Watson Holtry, FWHlegal.com. Today we are at a rainy, soggy-looking 530 Frederica Street at the high-rise white brick edifice, and I have PJ, as always, with me. How are you, PJ?
Doing okay.
It's not rainy yet, but I mean, it's coming.
It's dreary.
It's coming. Dreary is a better word.
It's dreary.
Well, we're going to hop right into it, PJ, because today we have a guest.
We do.
And, you know, usually I ask people to make sure I'm pronouncing their name properly, and I forgot to do that, so we're going to take a stab at this one. Katie Tercek.
You got it.
All right. How about that? Right out of the box.
You're a rarity. Nobody gets it right.
So Katie, we're going to allow her to do most of the talking, which is what we like our guests to do. But she comes to us from WFIE, Channel 14 News, and she is the Owensboro reporter for Channel 14. And we like to see that because, as we've discussed, PJ, Owensboro doesn't have really our own news. And so to have somebody that's kind of dedicated to us here, we use that word dedicated to you, right? And it seems like having somebody dedicated to Owensboro is a big thing. And we're fortunate to have Katie today. Now, Katie, before we jump in, this is the second time you were scheduled to be here, right?
Yes.
Right?
I'm a bit of a hot mess at times.
No. I like the way you're embracing this, so we're just going to kind of go that route first before we get to the good stuff. So about a month ago, I think, you were scheduled as a guest here on the podcast, and I'm just going to let you know how the news was broken to me, okay? The news was broken to me was, well, Katie is not going to be able to make it today. And I was like, okay. I was like, what went wrong? Because I thought maybe you got called to some, like we had a big fire or something in Owensboro, you know, and you had to be the reporter there. Didn't you, PJ? I mean, wasn't that kind of...
Yeah.
Except for you overheard the call, I think.
Well, I heard the tail end of the call.
Okay.
When Vincent got off, and then I was like, oh, I'm assuming that something happened with her work that she...
Yeah, and so Vincent comes down the hall. My office is on the other end of the hall from the media guys down here, and he says, hey, Katie's not going to be able to make it today. And I said, oh, okay. And I was like, well, what's wrong? He goes, well, do you want to know the truth or you want me to make something up? And I was like, well, the truth. I mean, you know, we're kind of truth people around here. He goes, she overslept. And I was like, all right. So my question to you, though, Katie, and no harm, no foul, right? We went right on and rolled with it. But here's the deal. Yeah, here we go. My question to you is, by any chance, did you listen to the podcast? Have you listened to this podcast?
Not yet.
Okay, now you're going to start. You're a devoted follower now. And it's a good thing because, man, we trashed you on that show.
I wouldn't go that far.
No, I'm joking. I'm playing with you. We started off at the show by discussing whether or not we should invite you back, okay? And PJ, who is always like my right hand of justice guy, you know, he softened up on me and said, well, I think that she deserves a second chance. And so because PJ has such a big heart, and because we really didn't mind you not being here and we are glad to have you, now we have you. How's that for an introduction?
That's a great introduction. And to sum it up, like, I love that you guys did say that. And you know what? That is vintage me. I go 100 million miles a minute. So does everybody. I mean, everybody's had a year. It's been a really long year. But yeah, I don't know, that morning, I forget what happened the night before, but it was just one of those mornings where you wake up and your to-do list, you just overlooked it. And if you ask my boss, and he was listening to this right now, he would be probably laughing.
Well, you know what? And it's great. You know, you remind me already a lot of one of my daughters, and we're just constantly shaking our head this way, left and right about her, and that she keeps our world full of joy. So glad you're here, and enough time about me and PJ here pouting about you not showing up. Let's get to the good stuff.
I really didn't say
you
very
did,
much.
PJ.
You see how he just
I'm gonna go back and listen to
drags
this.
me
you
down
need to go
with
back
him.
and listen to it, because I think he nicknamed you.
I'm pretty sure that's not how it went.
No. Anyway.
You ask Mayor Tom Watson too; he'll agree.
Oh.
He'll say, "Oh God, Katie."
Well, yeah, no, I know him, and I know his boys and stuff. So I'll have to get to him and ask him about you. But you have an interesting job, and we're going to get to how that has kind of how you've kind of gotten into knowing about Owensboro and some of the politics and things like that. But let's start a little bit with your background. Where were you born and raised?
I'm born and raised from Cleveland, Ohio.
Okay, all right. So Cleveland, Ohio, and did you graduate like high school there, and then make your choices on going to school and things?
Yep, high school, elementary school, the whole deal. Went to a Catholic high school called Notre Dame Cathedral Latin. And then from there, I went to St. Bonaventure University, where, truthfully, I'm an open book. I don't care. I have a blog about this stuff.
Right.
I had ADD. I grew up with ADD, so school was never really my thing. But what was my thing was speaking, talking, doing student council, all those types of things. So long story short, this girl did not get the best grades. So I had my choices, ended up getting into St. Bonaventure. My aunt and my uncle went there. It was great. Bonnie's like beer. It's a fun time. More importantly, though, when I went to St. Bonaventure, I wanted to study psychology, and my parents were like, girl, you're not going to pass. Like, you're not going to get an A in biology. Like, we don't believe in you. You know, they were like, this is not going to end well. Sure enough, they were right. I was like getting a D in biology, and I was just like, man, I'm done. I'm out of here. Like, I gotta switch paths or whatever. So long story short, ended up finding a professor, Paul Wieland, and he was our sports broadcast professor. Paul is he's amazing. He is an older guy. He's retired now. And basically, he became my driving force and inspiration behind news, behind where I am today. And then after that, it kind of unfolded. Senior year, I took over our broadcast program with another professor who Paul brought in. We kind of started building what's called SBU TV at Bonaventure from the ground up. And it was honestly, it was crazy. So here I am.
Yeah. So now, I'm kind of a basketball nut, and it just so happens that I think, if I got my years right, you were there when they did their little Cinderella trip. They got into the tournament on the play-in game in Dayton, right?
Yep.
And what year was that? 2018. 18.
Yeah.
Right. And so they got in because they won in Dayton, and then they got to go play in Texas, right? Who did they play in Texas? Do you recall?
Oh gosh.
Yeah,
it was Dallas. So we played, we beat Florida.
Right.
Then we played UCLA, I'm pretty sure.
Right.
Yeah.
And how exciting was that for the St. Bonaventure Bonnies? Is that what they're called?
Yeah.
Yeah. To
Sweet
knock
old Bonnies.
knock off the Gators, which was Billy. No, it's not Billy Donovan then. But anyway, and then you go and you get to play UCLA.
Yeah.
Like the
It was
Giants
crazy.
of college
I
basketball
know.
against St. Bonaventure
Yeah.
from up in New York, right? All right. Now I know this
absolutely.
doesn't mean anything to you. PJ.
I
You're not
am
a sports
enjoying
guy.
every single moment of this conversation.
This would be like something from a horror film. Then you get to talk to the guy. It's like
Right.
some obscure thing. But St. Bonaventure, they were the Cinderella story in that tournament, and makes it, beats the Florida Gators. I mean, what a game! So you
was
followed
crazy.
the team, right? You got to go.
I got to go, followed the team. It was like the trip of a lifetime. Like looking back, let's see, graduated college 3 years ago. So but between then and now, you grow so much as a person, and then
Right.
you grow so much as a reporter. So looking back, I'm like, oh, precious. Like, just so, you know, what sweet little times those were. But no, I mean, I will never forget that experience. And just being there in that tournament and as a student journalist. And I mean, we got to fly down there, and the alumni. The one thing about St. Bonaventure is our alumni are like, they're crazy. Like, they're awesome. Like you need a place to stay, someone will take you in. You need a beer, someone will give you a beer. You need a flight down to make it to the tournament, they will handle that. And that just speaks volumes for the community.
Right.
That is at that
well,
school.
that's awesome. So now, when you graduated from St. Bonnie, was your first job going out to Montana?
Yes.
Okay. Now,
Yeah.
All right. This intrigues me.
I know it.
Right?
It's a big conversation starter.
Okay, so we go from St. Bonaventure in the east, northeast of all northeast, right, out to Great Falls, Montana. Am I right about that?
Yep.
Great Falls, Montana.
I'm impressed. You did so much homework, and here
so-
I overslept the one day.
Oh yeah, well, see,
You actually had extra time. So
That's
maybe
right.
That's
Well, we are dedicated to you and committed to justice around here, right, PJ?
We are.
And so,
What a great plug.
Yeah.
Wow,
so-
yeah.
Shameless.
I'm gonna come work
Shameless.
for you guys after this.
You need to. Yeah, we've always got openings. We have a whole media arts department now,
Oh, wow.
so
Yeah.
we may need a publicist. Who knows? So anyhow,
Yes.
you went to a station out there, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, tell me about that. But then I think there was a story that was like kind of got your attention
Yes.
and became
Yep.
sort of a way that you kind of launched yourself. So tell us about that.
Absolutely. Yep. So I worked for KFBB in Great Falls, Montana. It was the ABC Fox affiliate. Real quickly, I'll put a plug in about this because a lot of people don't really understand in news. So if you go to different stations across the United States, like for example, you look at 25, you have like the CW and then you have ABC. So a lot of stations are like combined with their affiliates. I don't even, to be honest, like know why they do that. I just think back in the day, there was a merger and that's how it went. So anyway, so I worked for the ABC Fox affiliate, and so in Montana, there are a lot of Native American reservations. And when I first got there, it blew my mind because here I was, this girl from Cleveland, Ohio. We don't have any reservations in Cleveland. And then in New York, we actually have, at Bonaventure, we actually have a reservation there, but I never really realized how important it was, or how just the severity of the situation, the impact that the reservations had, the history behind them. So all of a sudden I started, finding out about the Native American reservations, particularly the Blackfeet Reservation, which is right up against Glacier National Park. So if you guys have ever been out west, if you don't know what Glacier National Park is, Yellowstone National Park, basically like those parks, like they kind of like bump up together, or they're like the two big parks in the Montana region or whatever. There's a thing called MMIP. It stands for Missing Murdered Indigenous People. And what's happened is there's basically a just mass amount of missing Indigenous people that go missing, they get murdered, and for no rhyme or reason. I mean, drugs or whatever else have played a role over the time, but the violence and all those types of things, it's like, why is this happening? What's going on? So one story that I particularly covered was Ashley Loring Heavy Runner, and it's made national news. I've connected with the family, and it will be a story that will like forever stay with me. Like, my dream is to go to network one day, and I hope that if I ever do make it that far, that I will be able to cover this story on a platform, because it was just crazy. Like, this family, she had been missing, she still hasn't been found. It's been 3 years now, but she's just one of the many, many, many cases that you see across these reservations, and the rallies that people held, the families you meet, the people just wanting just justice, the people going up to Washington, D.C., wanting answers, wanting to make a change. And what you don't realize is that the issue goes beyond the Blackfeet Reservation. It's like, you have to involve D.C., you have to, the FBI gets involved, like all these entities get involved, and if no one knows. And I remember, like, my Cleveland girlfriends, they were like, we never knew this existed. And I was like, yeah, I know. There's so much in the world we don't know about.
Okay, now have you have you watched Longmire on Netflix by any
No,
chance?
but I've watched Yellowstone.
Yeah, and it was in Longmire that I got kind of an understanding because it deals with the reservations and the different reservations and how, I mean, the Indians from one reservation, Native Americans in another reservation. I mean, you would think that they would get along, and they don't. And there's a lot of crime on those reservations. And you're right. It's one of those things. I wonder if we've kind of turned our head the other way. And so what an interesting story. When I read about that, I didn't know. I didn't know if that was her name, or if, like, I thought maybe somebody went running on the reservation and disappeared because it said heavy runner, and I was like, is that one of those ultra marathoners that was like out running and went missing? But then I saw the indigenous people, the MMIP, and so I was like, oh, okay, it makes sense. So, PJ, did you have any idea of such a thing at all?
No.
Okay. And one of the questions I have for you is, have you seen any of the Yellowstone or any of the Longmire?
Well, I've seen Longmire before. It's been years since I watched that show, but I haven't seen Yellowstone.
Yeah. That was just where I first started thinking about the reservations. I mean, that's bad. I mean, but it's because it's so far away from us here in Kentucky.
But that's the thing, is it's like, you look at, especially this past year, you look at, America's history, and you look at all the things that have happened, and it's like, we don't talk about it enough. We don't have open conversations. We have no idea, because we sit in our small little bubbles in our homes and our families, which is great. It's wonderful. That's good. But I don't know. It constantly brings a curiosity among us. I mean, even, coming here, it's just the South. You're kind of in the South-ish.
Oh, yeah, when you cross that river over there,
yeah,
that river that's just a few hundred yards that way, they put you in the South when you come from Indiana to Kentucky. I've had to have that discussion with people. I was like, over here we talk a lot slower, and we, iced tea.
Even in Indiana, I think. I mean, I think, like, this is really... But, I mean, I'm used to it now, so I don't really think twice. My mom thinks I have an accent now, and I'm like...
No, you don't have an accent.
That's what I tell her.
Yeah, I would have guessed that you were from Cleveland area, actually. Yeah. I have relatives up in Columbus, and we go up to Cleveland sometimes. I would have... when you said that, I was like, it makes sense. Spot on. So good deal. Let's talk a little bit about what you're doing here, and what kind of takes up most of your time. You are a local reporter. So what is the predominant, the majority of what you're covering? Is it political stories, news stories that involve government? What is it that takes up a majority of your time as a reporter here in Owensboro?
Oh, I don't know. That's a tough question. It shouldn't be a tough question. But so the news cycle, the day of the news cycle runs so fast that it's all like, it's something different, to be honest with you, every single day. But, obviously during election time, it's political. If there's something political that's controversial going on, that's the story. A lot of community-driven, what do we care about type situations, and that's one thing to kind of put a plug in right now. If anybody has any ideas or issues that they want to come talk about, I'm always listening.
I saw that you're always looking for the next story.
I'm always looking for the story. And so I think it just really depends on the day. I'm actually right now, I am working on what we call developing a story on the Burmese population and vaccination efforts. And so it's really been, that's kind of a piece where we get our assignment for the day and we run with it. And so it's like, we don't really, it's a rarity where I kind of get to plan out a story or whatever. But because of the way the timing worked out with interviews, I've been able to plan that out. So I'm hoping to run that story this week. But I don't know. Is that answering your question well enough?
It is.
I'm sorry.
I was looking at some of the
I don't know.
Well, like, we have some we've had over the, let's take the pandemic out of the equation, okay?
Yeah, for the love of God.
But, we had little hot topic issues one that comes to mind is the moving of the statue down here on the corner. That was a big one.
That was a big one.
And it's still going on.
It's
still an issue.
We just ran a story on it.
I actually got a phone call from a guy who said that he he had gone in the courthouse to register his motorcycle and came out, and a guy started yelling at him, and he was like, I have nothing to do with this. I'm just, I mean, kind of like it was real, and of course, again, we're isolated. I'm up here working, and I don't have any idea that that's really going on just a few blocks away.
Me neither.
But
a couple weeks ago, I walked down there because I had to do something at the clerk's office, and there was like some dude standing out there with a Confederate flag, like in front of the statue, which I don't fully understand. He didn't have a sign or anything, so I think he doesn't realize the war is over.
Everybody. I realized yesterday you and I had a conversation, a situation involving a vaccine issue in a family, and sometimes I have a hard time understanding that there is so much other weird stuff going on that people are just totally emotionally tied to. And while it may not make sense to us, now I look and I'm like, well, there's a few things I'm emotionally tied to too. And if something began to infringe on that, I would fight. I'd be outspoken, So if their thing is protecting a monument or the Civil War or anti that, then that's their thing, and let them go that way as long as it's peaceful. And we've had that discussion.
Yes. Yeah.
Now another thing is we locally had what was here in Owensboro, one of the top 10 ever drug busts in the state of Kentucky or something like that.
That was crazy.
Not to be proud of that, but so I'm sure that was something you got and had to.
That was an interesting day. I was like, wow, that's a lot of drugs. They were all on the table.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and it was when you see that type of work by
drug enforcement. DEA.
I'm sorry guys.
Yeah,
I'm on
the
5
DEA.
That's okay.
Yeah,
I hear there were
the
so
DEA.
many drugs that were caught. They were actually able to give out free samples.
No. Oh my God. You don't get me
She's
guys.
denying it.
Guys, don't
She's
get me
denying
fired.
No.
I told my boss I'm gonna go on this nice podcast. I'm just kidding. But no, I mean, in reality, that's great news because that's something that they have been working on and constantly working on, and that goes hand in hand with one of the other topics that is near and dear to my heart here in Owensboro, and that's the homelessness, the the drug issues that we have, things like that, and it's really like, I think what we need in 2021 more than ever is we need to be able to look at people and we need to be able to say, what's your story?
Right.
Who who are you? Let's talk. Let's have a conversation. Because I could be on TV every night, but y'all don't know what I'm actually, what my mindset is like behind closed doors. And that's not, and you guys are, in the law industry, you go home to your family every night. You got to pick up your kid from soccer. Everybody has no idea what people are going through right now.
Right.
And I think for me, bringing those issues home and shining light on them is so important because it's like, if we don't do that, and we don't have these open community conversations, whether it's a Confederate statue, whether it's drugs, homelessness, the boat ramp, I don't know.
Right.
I mean, it could be something so silly like the Romp Festival coming back, you name it. Right. But I think those are the community conversations that always need to take place. And if people get in the habit of constantly continuing to do that, we'll be way better off in the world.
Well, I agree with you. And that's one of the reasons, believe it or not, that's a perfect tie-in to why we do this. Mm-hmm. Because and those who listen faithfully know I've said this over and over again. You can drive down 60, go 60 toward Hancock County, or turn around and come back down 60, go out to OMU and come back, and you will count anywhere from 10 to 15 billboards that are peddling legal services. Okay, lawyers, and they all look the same. Mm-hmm. They have a lawyer's picture, and they have a word like injured, car wreck, divorce, bankruptcy, whatever, and a phone number. And
all your life's issues come to us.
They're static. Okay, and so one day my wife said to me, she was like, you need to figure out a way to let people get to know you and get to know what's behind the scenes at your office, and lets them in on more transparent. Let them into the FWH story. And I was like, okay, that's great. That would be the hardest billboard ever to design, And I'm totally thinking on the wrong planet, right?
Yeah.
And she says, no, do a podcast. And so I was like, all right, that's a dumb idea. And then a week and a half later, I'm sitting down with PJ, and we're planning out how to do a podcast, okay? And we're now in our second year of doing it, and
That's
haven't
awesome.
missed a week.
And now you're episode 84. So
I was going to be, episode 78?
Yeah.
Something like that, yeah. You slept through a few of them, but it's okay.
But the reason for that goes back to what you just said. We want people to know the FWH story. And this week it may be something serious. Next week it may be something funny. But we've been able to get our staff on this podcast. We've been able to get guests like you on this podcast just to kind of give, because we are committed to this community too. We are very involved in the community. One of the names I'm sure you know that is one of our good friends, Harry Pedigo from St. Benedict's.
Yes, Harry's awesome.
Yeah, and we're working on ways to partner with them to help them. We used our radio time for the month of April to get the message out about local nonprofits needing more than they normally do because of being depleted from COVID, and so one of our commitments is to the community and these issues that you see and report on, what we can do to fix them, and so I think it's great that you mentioned that everybody's got a story, and we're just trying to be a part of that story, So it's encouraging to hear that outlook from you as a reporter in the news, and trying to really just get that out, so other people see it. So
agreed.
Anything else we want to add? I mean, this has been great. You know what? It was well worth the miss. You've been money.
No, thank you. Yeah.
PJ, anything you want to ask?
Yeah, several things I've been thinking about, but here's something I'm kind of curious about. So, obviously, within the last 5 years or so, because of certain individuals in certain seats of power, the way people look at news, science, common sense, has shifted in a lot of ways. Some for the negative, probably not as much for the positive. But in the last 4 or 5 years, how have you noticed that shift, even locally? Because there's obviously there's the whole the fake news individuals that have really seemed to come out the woodwork recently. But so as far as and most of that seems to be pointed towards national news, but with local news, how has the perspective shifted or the conversations changed over the last several years that you've noticed based on kind of this national perspective of how people look at the news?
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, I would say that the whole fake news stigma, it's yes, please question me. A lot of journalists, I'm going to go back on that. There's definitely, I think, a lot of times where we can all get offended by this fake news stigma. Me personally, it's go ahead and question it. Go ahead, you should. You should be your own journalist. The viewer should yes, I want them to question things, but at the same time, I want you to trust me because I do my job. If I don't think something's right, I recheck it. I recall on it. But I think the stigma has made me personally as a journalist more aware of this time more now than ever, people don't trust us. And whether people agree with that stigma, they hate it, it happened. And it's the same thing with these conversations that we're having across the country. It's news is a conversation. I mean, I have friends, family that are what, you do news? Oh, right. So I think to answer your question it's just one of those things where you kind of have to realize that is a stigma, but people want their news. There is a platform for it. I'm in a workshop, a journalist workshop thing. And one of my, someone that I look up to as a journalist, he said, he was there is a platform for news. People do want their news because in a time of crisis, people have to get their information from somewhere. So I think it's more of this, how are we bringing the news and how do we change that transparency like you even brought up? I think it just becomes it's a transparency, whether it's the Me Too movement back in college. That was a big thing. It's okay, now workplaces need to be more transparent with those types of things. Okay, fake news. Now we need to come on the air and reassure you that, no, we're not lying to you, buddy. We're telling you the truth. I swear this happened. I saw it with my own eyes, buddy. So it's just one of those things. And I don't know. I mean, is that a good Is that an
yeah,
okay
and I'm not one of those fake news people. This kind of
No,
goes into what he was talking about earlier with like the vaccine conversation we had yesterday. We've gone through human history where we went from believing witches and vampires were killing people to science coming to the forefront. And I'm not saying that mystical things can't be real. I believe in Bigfoot and the possibility of aliens, but as far as far as like vaccines and things, like there's been this weird shift where people who are well known throughout history who broke the mold to help further science and get us to a point where there's a reason why you don't know anybody who's dying of polio or tuberculosis or tetanus. It's because there's vaccines.
Right.
That's why you don't know anybody dying from that. So it's like, take the vaccine.
And the thing I think about America, though, is it's like we have this really cool ability. And no matter, this is what I told people throughout the pandemic, because obviously I've had to cover stories that shows this side, that side, any side, you know? And the thing that I think is important is for people to realize we live in a country where we do have the freedom to do what we want to do. Obviously, you know, if one entity says this is the right thing to do, majority of the people believe in this, majority of the people believe in that. I think it just comes down to knowing like, okay, well, this is my choice. Yeah, I mean, it's been a long 5 years. Politically, not politically.
I can imagine.
I mean,
well, you remember at the beginning, at the outset of the pandemic with COVID-19, and I don't know if you remember this, PJ, but the thing that frustrated me the most, you could make a case for it is going to be a big deal, it isn't going to be a big deal.
Right.
Masks make a difference, masks don't make a difference. You know, and that how is it spread, and how long do you carry it, and how long you could read in 5 different places and get 5 different pieces of information about it, and it totally became overwhelming. I mean, it was sensory overload, and I think that was more devastating to America than probably the COVID thing. It was like that began the antitrust, in my opinion. It was like, I don't trust anybody because everybody's feeding me something
it keeps
different.
Changing.
Right. You know?
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's a good point.
You know, we were facing something that we had never faced before.
I know.
And I think the big issue that we run into now is so many people go, I watched a YouTube video, so now I'm a virologist.
Right.
You know, I saw a meme, so now I know more than the top leading minds in the country. So, and to me, that's what's frustrating. Like, I completely agree with what you said. People have a choice. And as long as they're doing something that doesn't hurt someone, there's nothing wrong with it. But at the same time, we seem to, in a lot of ways, and I know some things are kind of a fad, even the presidency, because I've noticed that now that Trump is out of office, my Facebook feed is not saturated with politics. You know, I think the most I saw was when Biden fell on the stairs. You know, that was probably the most politics I've seen recently. But
I need to have your friend list because mine's still full of politics.
Is it still full of politics?
Yeah, I'm like, well, maybe we'll switch Twitter feeds.
Yeah.
I'm glad you said that. I was like, oh, that's
maybe I just haven't been getting on Facebook enough.
Sounds like you're living in a dream world.
Maybe I am.
Well, and I think, dude, like people, for me, it's like put down the phone. I mean, and this is coming from someone that wants you to pick up your phone and watch the news. Like, I do want that. You know, I don't want viewers to not watch the news, but I think it's like everybody gets in this like social media frenzy of like, I'm going to start this fight on this or that. Sometimes it's just like, guys, let it go.
Yeah.
Let it go.
Yeah.
And if someone wants to tweet at me and say something that's like, okay, well,
right.
You know, it is what it is.
I am glad to hear somebody that's in your industry say what you just said. Like, you know, take some time. Like, I gave you some advice not long ago, PJ.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, go to the woods. Be quiet for a while.
I didn't fully take his advice either.
No.
And then I had to come back to him for a refresher course.
Yeah,
so.
I'm the same way. It happens.
There were times in my past where I would take a weekend and I would go. Nobody knew where I went. I would not take my phone with me. I would not turn on the TV. I mean, I just totally go off the grid.
Yeah.
And it is amazing when you come back, the amount of clarity you have on some things, and you realize it's very refreshing. We need accurate, dependable reporting of the news. We need people who are willing to go the extra mile to educate us through media, because let's face it, there is a lot going on, and there are a lot of causes, and there are and the people that are on the battlefield, so to speak, of disseminating that to the masses, what an important job. And I think that I like the fact, question me, ask me, and if I've made a mistake, I'll be the first to own it.
Will.
And I think that's a lot of it, is the accountability is.
That's what I was just getting ready to say.
I got to own it. I mean, something really small happened to us, and we used to call this in my introduction, we used to say, coming to you from the high-rise white tower at 530 Frederica Street, as a joke, because it's 2 stories, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so that was kind of a joke.
It's a hilarious joke too.
And so we had one of the radio stations started to call us, PJ and I, the White Tower Boys. Well, that went on at about the same time that we were having a lot of the marches in Louisville, the Black Lives Matter, all that. We didn't even know they were doing it. We didn't even know they were referring to PJ and I. Yeah. And the second we heard it, we called, and we were like, no, that you are disseminating the entire wrong image. It's being heard wrong. Get it off.
Yeah, because when you say it quickly, it sounds like something else.
Yes, it does. It sounds like, yes, it does. So, and also just, the high-rise white tower, the whole thing was not thought through. But we owned it. We said, hey, we made a mistake. We took care of it quickly, and have made it now a joke, calling it the high-rise white brick edifice, something that way it's correct. That is correct. That is the description of our building.
That is right.
But anyhow, that's just a small example. Just own it. If you're wrong, or if you've misstated something, or you've overstated it or understated, just say, this is what I had, and I made a mistake. I think if more of that was done, not just in the news industry, if that was done in big pharma, if that was done in the legal field, it'd be a much better place to live.
It's put down the pride.
Right.
Exactly. And so that's what I've noticed, and that's when you said accountability is, and something else that seems to have gone to the wayside is context. For a lot of people, context is very important, and accountability is very important, and just reasonable discourse is very important. And I know so many people that, I haven't gotten rid of so many people on Facebook as I have in the last 4 or 5 years. And it's because it's almost like our universe merged with some weird parallel Earth, and a lot of common sense went out the window, and all these people that you thought you knew, suddenly it's like they're like this whole other person.
Yeah. I know. And it's like my boyfriend is not coming to your wedding because you did this, or you voted for this, or you're not taking the vaccine. And I'm like, guys.
And even when they're wrong, instead of going, you know what, you're right, I am wrong, they double down half the time now.
That's what I don't get. Like, you and I have very diverse beliefs when it comes to religion.
Right.
However, you one time told me, and I've told you one time told me, you're the easiest person to talk to about the diversity in our beliefs without making me feel like I'm wrong. It's saying, hey, this is my belief, and I would encourage you to think about what I believe.
Right.
But I can't change you. And we've had great discussions, because it's not like I'm right, you're wrong, and you thinking the same way, that you're right and I'm wrong. This is what we believe and why we believe it, and I would encourage you to think about why I believe it. And that's the news comes into that, because there's so many varying opinions. It's like, this is the facts, and you guys can digest them, and what comes out is yours. It's on you. So
it is interesting. It's like but you go back to accountability, and like a little quick story. Sorry, do we have time?
Yeah, okay. Sure.
There was this one story, and during the pandemic, and we still are in the pandemic, but during wintertime, it was really depressing and hard, because it was like when it was crummy out and all this other stuff. But I did this story, and I filmed the shop, the outside of it. It was in downtown Owensboro, and I ended up saying the wrong name of the shop on air, and I felt horrible about it, because but that's an example of accountability, but you got to own up to it. And but it's those situations where it's but that's something little, it's not right. It's not gonna kill me at the end of the day, it's not gonna kill anybody, but you feel so horrible about those things, because you're no, how did I do that? But it's because you're human.
You're right.
Because you literally are a human being. And I think too, I'm a perfectionist that's working to become not a perfectionist. Because if you think about it, like, you know, we have these visions in our lives of, like, you know, mom and dad want me to go to church every Sunday. Mom and dad want me to get married. Mom and dad want me to do this. But in reality, it's like you have to grow apart from things, and you have to, you know, hold yourself
Discover
accountable.
them on your own,
right.
and
Realize what's best for you. And yes, all those things are wonderful and happy and nice and make for great things. But at the end of the day, you know, you just got to kind of find your thing.
Right. So how much hate mail did you get? It's like, how dare you call that the wrong business?
It was just a little bit, but
I'm sure there was at least one person that has way too much time on their hands.
Well, Katie, just so people that are listening, if at the end of this, like, how you have a Twitter feed, how do they get in touch with you? Because if they say, hey, I want to get in touch with you about a story.
For sure. So I have Twitter, and then I also have Facebook and Instagram, and let's see. So my Facebook page is Katie Tercek at 14 News. I'm like, what is my username? And then my Twitter, hold on. It's K Tercek 14 News. You got to change them at all the stations,
That's
okay?
Right.
All right.
K Tercek at 14 News. And of course, they can call the station. They can
and even if you just look up my name
right.
on social media, you'll be able to flag it down. And find it.
Right. Well, we really appreciate.
I appreciate you guys,
and we're here for you if you have questions on legal issues and, you know, or stories that are in the court system and stuff, and you just want some definition of legal terms and understanding that stuff.
Yes.
Feel free to pick our brains. We have PJ here who can help you out.
No, honestly, the court documents are the worst to go through. Like, times I'm like, oh god, here we go.
Yeah, no,
I like how you just threw me under the bus because I'm not even an attorney.
You are?
I know just enough to be dangerous, but I still can't figure out how he does what he does.
PJ works with our media arts and with Vincent but we have a great team here, and if you ever need anything from Foreman Watson Holtree, just call or email or text, whatever. We'll help.
And if you ever need a filler story, I just had a brand new film that I made that came out last month.
There you
so you know,
that's awesome. That's so
cool. He produces.
Shot locally. Most of it was filmed locally.
Really?
It's an anthology, so there's nine
so
other
maybe your next
done
story
around the country. Yeah,
maybe your
I
next.
respect. Do you do videography and stuff? Obviously, yeah. That's so cool.
All right. Well, we could go on and on. You've been a
I know.
wonderful guest.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, even though
we're going to have a big...
I blew you guys off.
Last year, we tried to organize an anniversary show where we brought back some people and had like an extended podcast. But you know what? I will promise you'll get that invite. Now, whether you show up...
You never know.
Just depends on the night before, right?
And if you ever want to do a story on the podcast,
that's right. We're here too.
No, definitely.
Just throwing that out.
That is interesting. There are
interesting.
very few legal podcasts in the United States, and in Kentucky, there's only a handful of them, and none that are really done by a firm. So
well, you guys will have to send me a link of this too, and I'll put it on social media.
You'll get all the.
I think Vincent's going to get with you about all that. So.
Cool.
All right. Well, as always, Done Lite.
Sounds good. Yeah. Have a good rainy day, everybody.
That's right. We'll talk to you soon.
This case should never have come to trial.
I don't think it's fair to call my clients frauds. Because one time I turned into a dog and they helped me. Thank you.
Your Honor, we would like to withdraw our plea of not guilty and enter a plea of guilty.
This trial is a travesty. It's a travesty of a mockery of a sham, of a mockery of a travesty of two mockeries of a sham.
If we are to have faith and justice, we need only to believe in ourselves.
And the truth shall set you free!
How do you plead, guilty or not guilty?
Oh, guilty, but with a real good excuse.
I think the truth will come forth.
You can't handle the truth!